Good morning, everyone. And um, sorry, seventh graders. Seventh and eighth, you're both getting the same video today. Seventh graders, sorry that I had to cancel live class today, um, but I am getting pulled out to do a training, which I have to go to at the admin building. So I will be out all day today. No office hours today for me, but I will be checking my email all day long. So please don't hesitate to email me if you need my help or have questions. And also, I am super happy to meet with you tomorrow um, if you're needing help with any of this stuff. Okay. So let's talk about planning this podcast. I know that a lot of you are already in this stage because a lot of you have emailed me questions, comments, etc. about your podcast. So some of you are already like well into this planning process. But what I'm going to ask you today is to show me a little bit about where you're at. So the first sheet that you're going to see that I have on the Google slideshow that's attached to this assignment looks like this. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that questions 3 and 4 and 6 are going to be optional. And you'll see why in a second, but I want to say that first before I forget. So, number 1, what's your topic going to be about? Okay. If you have a title for your podcast, would you please put it here? I'm really anxious to see your titles because titles are usually pretty interesting and give you a pretty good picture about the podcast. So if you have a title, put your title here. If not, then just tell me what it's going to be about. What is your topic not about? Okay, just like we talked about yesterday, you could really almost even copy paste what you put yesterday right into here. Now, here's why 3 and 4 are optional because it says, what existing podcast could you compare yours to? And what did you like about the way that podcast was created? So, for those of you that already listen to podcasts, you could probably compare yours right now to something, be like, oh, it's a little bit like this one because of this. But if you don't watch podcasts, or sorry, listen to podcasts, then you're not going to be able to do 3 and 4. You could potentially compare them to the ones that we listened to the other day, the sleep one and the one that had chocolate in the title. You could really compare yours to those, but some of you may not be able to make a comparison to those at all. So 3 and 4 are optional. If you can't fill those out, just leave those blank. Number 5, how are you going to make this interesting for your listeners? Everyone can kind of talk about that. 6 is optional because not everybody is going to be conducting interviews for their podcast, but if you are, who are some people you could interview for this topic? Okay, who would be your quote unquote experts? Wowza. 7, what's the purpose or goal of your podcast? And 8, what's your audience going to remember when it's over? Now, we did a lot of this yesterday. So if you did yesterday's assignment, you really have this part pretty much done. You can pretty much use what you did yesterday onto this, but it's just another way of kind of restating what our focus is, what our plan is. Okay. Now, the next page is going to be for those of you that are conducting interviews. So, here are some helpful tips if you're going to be interviewing somebody on your podcast. So, if you're going to be interviewing someone, you want to think about what you're going to ask them. So, you're going to want to have a list of questions ready, and then you want to kind of be ready to ask follow-up questions based on what they say. Now, you can't obviously predict what they're going to say to you, but you can kind of anticipate what they might say to you. So if you're going to be doing a podcast where you're interviewing someone, I want you to go ahead and write out your questions here so that you're not sitting there again, just kind of aimlessly wandering around thinking like, so what's your favorite color, right? Because you forget what you're supposed to ask them. So you want to have your focused and specific questions written right here, and kind of anticipating what direction you think the interview is going to go. Alrighty. So if you're not doing interviews, you're going to skip this part. But if you are doing interviews, you're going to want to plan out your questions here so that you have them right there, ready to go. Okay, now the last thing for today, the first 2 should be pretty easy, not take a whole lot of time. This is the part that we want to think through a little bit. Now, a lot of you have already started to do this, But if you talk to any podcaster, they're going to tell you that they usually have a transcript ready to go. And a transcript is a script. You know what a script is, right? It's like if you're in a play or something like that, you have a script that you read off of. Well, this is a transcript where you write down what it is that you want to cover. Sometimes people will write every word that they want to say. Sometimes people will just kind of make almost like a list of things that they want to cover. Either way, we consider this a transcript. So in this slide that I'm going to include for you that you can read through, there's kind of an example of a transcript here of actually, this is a transcription. That's something different. But you want to kind of plan out what it is that you want to say. Okay. You might put your questions in here. You might put your intro. Usually for me, like my intro and my conclusion are the things that I write out because I usually try to do something clever in those. And I want to make sure I use my words correctly. But the middle part of it might be a little more loose just because it kind of depends on the direction that your podcast goes. So here's my suggestion. Here's a format you can follow that will help you to make a transcript for your podcast. So what we're going to ask you to do today is think through all of these steps right here, and I want you to type up an outline for a transcript. Again, some of you are going to want to write out every word that you want to say. Some of you are just going to be able to do it more kind of like an outline to make sure that you cover everything that you want to cover. But basically, here's the parts. You want to have your introduction. Like I said, I would probably write out my introduction so I can make sure that I say exactly what I want to say. But your introduction should introduce you. It should introduce any guests that you're going to have, and it should give a lead, which means that you're introducing what your podcast is going to be about that day. Okay. So you want to make sure you have some sort of introduction for sure. Again, you're going to introduce yourself. You're going to introduce any guests that you might have, and you're also going to give us a little glimpse of what we're going to be doing today listening to your podcast. Okay. You're going to do a summary. This kind of comes right off of your lead. So your summary is really going to be one sentence summary of your episode. So for example, if your introduction, like if you were doing, you guys know I like true crime ones. So the way that my podcast usually begins is the girl says, "Hey, it's Ashley, and this is another episode of Crime Junkies. This is my guest host, Britt, and she's going to be here as well, hanging out with me today. And today, we're going to bring you a new case of a disappearance." That would be like, or maybe a new case of a disappearance that has rocked the state of Ohio. I don't know. I'm making this up. So that would be kind of like my lead. Now, my summary would be something like this. This episode is going to be about a teacher named Kara Johnson who went missing under very mysterious circumstances one day after school. Okay, let's hope that really doesn't happen, but you get what I'm saying. So that's the difference. Your introduction is where you're kind of telling them who you are, what your podcast is about. Your summary is going to give them kind of like one or two sentences that just kind of tells them what specifically you're going to be talking about in this episode. Okay. Then your content is the main part. So you're going to give your main point, your main topic. Then you're going to give all of your points that go underneath it. You're going to do your guest interviews during that part, if you have any, and then follow up with your conclusion. So for example, if I keep going with my disappearance of myself, right? So the main topic is going to be where I tell the story of what happened. Okay, so Kara Johnson was headed home after school one day. The teachers at school all saw her. They said she's in a great mood, and she left school because she had to get home to feed her kids dinner and then get them ready for soccer practice. But neighbors say that they never saw her car pull into her driveway, right? So that might be my main topic. And then my points underneath it are going to tell you, like, the evidence that I have from the police or from investigations or whatever. Like, this is where I start telling you all the theories of what might have happened. And if I have guests, I'm going to bring them in and talk about, what they know or whatnot to present all of that evidence to you. And then my conclusion is going to be my final thought. Like, nobody knows what happened to her. Her kids say she's probably just wandering around Target somewhere, but nobody knows for sure because she still has not returned home. Okay, I've made this totally cheesy, but that's kind of the format you would follow. So, what I want you to do today is I want you to type up a transcript that you're going to follow. Again, if you want to write out every word that you're going to say, that's fine. Or if you want to just do it like an outline where you just tell all of these main things, like, you write introduction and then underneath it you write the host is Jake Smelser, guest hosted by Karen Shrub, lead is today on this episode, whatever. And then under summary, you write your one sentence summary. And then under content, you write main topic. And then you tell what your main topic is. And then you write out all your points. Like, point one, she was seen leaving school. Point two, her neighbors say she never got home. Point three, whatever it might be, that's when you're going to lay out all of your facts or evidence or ideas or topics or whatever that you're going to cover. You would put your interviews at the bottom, like interview with Mr. Snyder, interview with Mr. Ladrick, whatever it might be. And then your conclusion, you're just going to give your final thought about what you think, how you're going to wrap it up, etc. But you're actually going to type this up and turn this in today for the assignment, and that's where your points are going to come from. So for those of you that have said that you've already started recording, that shouldn't be too hard for you because you've already kind of started. So you should easily be able to go back now and kind of write out this transcript, and that will help you get to the end. Okay? So if you have questions, please ask. I will help you as best I can through email. And then I'm happy to sit down with you tomorrow because tomorrow and Friday are just going to be recording days. We're just going to give you all that time to record. Okay? Alrighty. So, in conclusion, you're going to do as much of this planning as you can. If you're doing interviews, you're going to write out your questions and then you're going to type up a transcript, either full sentences or like an outline where you list your general points that you're going to cover. You're going to type it up and turn it in with this assignment. Okie doke. Alrighty, guys. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you, well, hopefully some of you tomorrow.